c'è, è probabile che non termini.
They will miss you. Yeah, well, I hope they will, but I.
You hope it-
As you said, you get to invest in them abroad, so maybe it's better to keep around.
Where was he from?
Switzerland.
He was a triangulator. Everything was measured within millimeters. And which is also sometimes, as an administrator.
Buenos días
a todos, bonjour à tous et à toutes, buongiorno a tutti, bon dia. Please take your seats. Good morning to everybody. And yeah, take your seats first. We're going to start. I call the meeting of the General Committee on Economic Affairs, Science, Technology and Environment. Are there any objections? So if there are no objections, the agenda is adopted. I imagine that no one wants to speak against the adoption of the agenda. So regarding the elections, may I remind colleagues that the election of committee officers for the next annual session of the Assembly will take place during the committee's final session, which is likely to take place on Tuesday morning, tomorrow morning. Nominations for candidates for election should be handed into the table office no later than the start of that meeting, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. In this second meeting, we will consider amendments to the draft resolution from the rapporteur, Mrs. Kugler. We will consider supplementary items when our main business on the draft resolution is concluded, time permitting. In discussing amendments, I will call the proposer first, of the amendment first, and then we'll call any opponent of the amendment. I will then ask the sponsor of the draft resolution, Mrs. Kugler, if she has, not already spoken, obviously, if she has any comments. Following that, I shall put the amendment to the vote. I ask speakers to observe a time limit of 1 minute. We also require to vote on every paragraph to which there are no amendments. So now we will take paragraphs 1 to 6 together. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs? Paragraph 1 to 6. So if nobody wants to have a separate vote, we take it together. Would anyone against these 1 to 6 paragraphs? Those in favor?
Should raise their hands.
Please raise cards. And
So we're not going to count them.
abstentions?
One abstention.
So with one abstention, it's
2 abstentions. Yeah, it's adopted.
it's adopted. Okay. So now,
If you want us to count, we need to keep them high for a little bit.
okay,
otherwise we'll not
okay.
count.
So we will start with the amendment 1. I call Ms. Telman from Romania to propose. Please, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, after consulting with the rapporteur, Mrs. Gudrun, we agreed on a new version of the amendment on paragraph 7. So I am submitting, as far as I understand, a new oral amendment, and of course I'm asking dear colleagues for unanimous support. So I would like to read the new amendment and then start also the discussion. So, alarmed that the war in Ukraine has significantly weakened, so we stay to the word weakened, security, stability, connectivity and prosperity across the OSCE region, and condemning the devastating impact on environment, and here is a full stop, not a comma. So this would be the new proposal for the new amendment. Of course, we propose to include the impact on security and environment, and in our opinion, it's it's inadequate to mention the impact of the sanctions imposed on the Russian by the Western community. So that would be the reason.
Thank you, Ms. Telman.
And of
Does
course
anyone want to speak against the amendment?
First, it's an amendment, so there has to be an amendment.
So just to clarify, an oral amendment has been proposed, and in accordance with paragraph 10 of Rule 22 of the Rules of Procedure, first I will ask whether there is any objection to the oral amendment being considered. If there is any objection, the oral amendment cannot be considered and it falls. No objections, I understand. So now if Ms. Kugler wants to comment on, and then we will vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning also from my side to all of you. I would like to thank Mrs. Tellman for this oral amendment. I think it's a beautiful way of doing of democratic dialogue that we set together and changed your original amendment to this. I think is extremely meaningful. We are adding the terms security and environment, which was missing from the original draft. I think this is key that we do mention the adverse impacts that the war in Ukraine has on security, of course, and environment. You can see that we are dropping the last part of that original wording, cognizant of the adverse impact of the sanctions. We know that there are adverse impacts, but we also understand that the Ukrainian delegation is not happy to point it out in the report. So I think it's okay to drop it. I'm in favor of supporting the oral amendment of Mrs. Tellman, and I hope you do too.
So the Vice President asked me to take the floor. I will let you 15 seconds to take the floor.
First of all, I want to say our colleague from Romania for this. Thank you to our colleague from Romania, and thank you, Gudrun, for supporting this position. Colleagues, I understand about sanctions, but from the heart of Ukrainian people, I kindly ask you now to support this amendment. Why? More sanctions, less missiles to the heads of Ukrainian children and women. You need to understand this is strong mathematical formula. Thank you.
So thank you very much to all, and I shall now put the oral amendment to vote. So the ones who are in favor, please raise the cards and let us a little bit of time to count.
We don't need to count.
No? Okay. Okay. So thank you. Who is against the amendment? Okay, any abstentions on the amendment? One. Okay. So adesso votiamo?
Adesso votiamo su, segui questo. Now we will vote on paragraph 7 as amended.
So thank you. Now we have to vote the paragraph 7 as amended. So we vote the amendment first, and then we vote the amended paragraph. We don't need to?
Just voted on the amendment. It's okay, yeah. Because the paragraph is actually a full amendment. I mean, the amendment is a paragraph.
Okay, so as is the full amendment, we give it as a vote.
Yeah.
So thank you. The amendment has been approved. So now we go to the amendment number 2. Number 2. So we have a little bit. So we go now to the paragraph 8, and Ms. Tellman has the floor again.
No, it's just to vote in favor. No changes to it.
Okay, so as there are no changes, we vote. If there is any against this paragraph? Abstentions? Votes in favor? Adesso il 13, no?
Adesso qui, Mr. No, segui questo, non seguire questo. Questo, qua.
Adesso cosa faccio ora?
Il paragraph, questo è adopted.
So this paragraph is adopted. And now amendment 2, I call Ms. Tellman from Romania to propose it. Amendment 2. Thank you, you have the floor.
Thank you, dear Chair. Also, after discussing with the rapporteur, we were on the same mind, actually, and we decided that not to delete the 9th paragraph, Therefore, I withdraw my second amendment on the draft resolution, and I submit the text as an oral amendment. So I insert a new paragraph after paragraph 9, condemning that Russia is using the food supplies as a weapon by blocking the exports of food from Ukraine Black Sea ports and disrupting the farming in Ukraine. Both the original text and also my amendment, in my opinion, express different situations, and both are very well welcomed in the draft resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thelman. And an oral amendment then has been proposed. And in accordance with paragraph 10 of Rule 22 of Rules of Procedure, first, I will ask whether there is any objection to the oral amendment being considered. If there is any objection, the oral amendment cannot be considered and it falls. So there is any objection to this amendment? No. If there is no objection, we will proceed to consider amendment in the same way as other amendments. That is, we will hear from the proposer of the oral amendment, one speaker against the oral amendment, and the opinion of the rapporteur.
Thank you again, Ms. Thelman, for this very good way of cooperation we could find. So I would support the oral amendment. I would ask your support. And the idea is to leave in paragraph 9 as it is in the original text and to add afterwards the proposal that you have in your papers. We think that both is important. Paragraph 9, original text, is about economic connectivity, and this is really what OSCE is also about. Securing security through economic connectivity. It's important for us. But also to condemn what is happening by using the shortage of food as a weapon, right? So we want both. First the original text, then the new added language. The added language you see in your papers. In the oral amendment, there is no change to it. So I do ask you to support Mrs. Thelman's oral amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Kugler. So I shall put the oral amendment to vote. So the ones who are in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. The ones who are against, please raise your hand. And abstentions? Adopted, no? Thank you. So the amendment has been adopted. So we will now vote on paragraph 9. Anyone against? Those in favor? Okay. Abstentions? So the paragraph 9 is agreed. Paragraphs 10 to 12. We will now take paragraphs 10 together. Does anyone want a separate vote of any of these paragraphs? Separate vote of these paragraphs. So we'll take them together. Anyone against? So those in favor? Okay. Abstentions? So paragraph 10 to 12 are adopted. So amendment 3, I call Mr. Garamendi from the US to propose amendment 3.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, in fact, I'm Congressman Joe Wilson of South Carolina, and it's an incredible indication of how war criminal Putin has done something that is unheard of. He has united Republicans from my home state of South Carolina, and I get to stand in for Congressman John Garamendi, the former Democrat Lieutenant Governor of California. And so the unintended consequence on behalf of the people of Ukraine is America is united. With that in mind, Ukraine is one of the world's great breadbaskets. War criminal Putin seeks to hold the world's food supply hostage in order to force an outcome that will reward his brutal and unprovoked war of aggression and create even greater instability in the years to come. Putin's war is sacrificing young Russians to death for his benefit of oil, money, and power for Putin. The Russian Black Sea blockade is preventing Ukrainian grain from being shipped to where it is needed the most. This will lead to mass starvation and death. 1.7 billion food insecure people are at risk across the world. We cannot give in to Putin's blackmail. It's imperative that we work together to unblock Ukrainian ports and enable Ukrainian grain to reach the rest of the world. I urge my colleagues to continue to work together to put an end to Putin's plans to starve the world, including through considering military options. Sadly, this is not the first time that there has been a use of hunger and starvation as a tool of statecraft. We must learn from history and allow it not to repeat. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Garamendi. Does anyone wish to speak against this amendment, Amendment 3? If not, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Cook.
Didn't he sound eloquent?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a very good idea, and I thank Mr. Garamendi for proposing it. The term armed conflict really needs to be in there, and then also to mention the food risks for so many people. This is, in a way, a newer development. When we drafted the report, it was not as apparent. You have all heard the pleas of World Food Programme Executive Director David Beasley, who said what is going to come in the next 12 to 24 months goes beyond our imagination. So we have to have this in our respective political work, and this is why I support the amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Kugler. So I shall now put Amendment 3 to the vote. So please, the ones in favor, raise your hands. Ones against, please raise your hands. Count.
Yeah, we're counting more. We did.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Abstentions?
Against it, we didn't hear it against it.
No.
No, non erano against nessuno against. Sì, dillo di nuovo against.
Can we repeat the ones who are against?
2 people. Okay.
So the Amendment 3 is adopted. We will vote now on paragraph 13. Anyone against paragraph 13? Those in favor? Abstentions? So paragraph 13 is adopted. Now paragraphs 14 to 41 with no amendments. We will now take paragraphs 14 to 41 together. Does anyone want a separate vote of these paragraphs? No? So they will take them together. Anyone against? Anyone against? 2. Those in favor? Okay, thank you. Abstentions? 2 against.
1 abstention.
So the paragraphs are adopted. I will call now Ms. Odebrink from Sweden to propose amendment. I would like to remind you that you have 1 minute to defend your position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to Ms. Kugler for a comprehensive report. And I hope you will support my amendment as it's written in my amendment. I want to underline the need of continued prioritization of gender equality issues. The strongest and most sustainable societies are those based in equal possibilities for women and men, where women have the power of their own life, social and economical freedom. We're building better societies when women have half of the power in decision-making, assemblies, and in business. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Odebrink. I would like to ask if there is anyone against the amendment who wants to take the floor. So if not, I let the floor to Ms. Gudrun to comment on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mrs. Odebrink, for your comments. For me, it's a little bit difficult, and I would actually want to argue against the amendment. I agree with your intention that we need women representation, and I agree with also there's two more amendments on this issue, and I think that we should decide which one of those to adopt with your amendment, while agreeing with the intention. I think that the relation of the outcome is not so clear, because we say we have these problems and this is why we need more representation of women in order to solve the problems. I agree that we need more representation of women, but I do not see that this is directly connected here to this point. And this is why I would then be instead in favor of carrying amendment number 6 as counterbalancing and supporting your intention.
Thank you, Ms. Kugler. I shall now put amendment 4 to the vote. So please raise your cards, the ones in favor of the amendment. In favor of the amendment.
Keep them high.
Please raise your cards, if not, we cannot count.
What do we have? 12 here.
Okay.
Anya? Did you manage to find this?
Quanti?
It's 38.
38. Against the amendment, please raise your card.
Okay, I like to count as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay.
Abstentions?
0. Adopt. Yeah.
So the amendment has been adopted. So we will now vote on paragraph 42 as amended. Anyone against? Those in favor?
We don't need to count it.
Okay. Abstentions? Okay, so the paragraph 42 is agreed. And now on amendment 5, I call Ms. Odebrink from Sweden to propose amendment 5. You have the floor for 1 minute.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Also here I want to point on the consequences of the corona pandemic, and that the gender equality has taken several steps backwards in the world and in the OSCE region. Women have been forced to leave their jobs to take care of children and elderly people. Women have lost their jobs to a greater extent than men, but women are also those who have been in the front line during the pandemic to save lives and to maintain vital service. Therefore, we need to have gender equality issues on top of the agenda when we talk and decide about recovering from the COVID-19. So I hope you support my amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Odebrink from Sweden. Does anyone wish to speak against this amendment? So again, I let the floor to Ms. Gudrun to comment on the amendment. Thank you.
So we have here the amendment 5 and amendment 6, and it's about the same paragraph. And I would suggest that we will here carry amendment 6 and not amendment 5, because it's amending the same paragraph. And the wording that Hedi Fry from Canada proposes here is the same intention, but it's a little bit broader, talking about intersectional gender lens for everything we do, including perspective of diverse groups. So in this case, I would suggest to not carry amendment 5, but carry amendment 6, because both amend the same paragraph.
Thank you, Ms. Gudrun. I have to put amendment 5 let's say, to vote. We have to vote, so I will ask the ones in favor of the Amendment 5 to raise card, please. We're going to vote. We're going to count.
This is against, eh?
No, in favor of the amendment.
No, they will get now this week.
Against the amendment? Okay, one of those tres. Okay, adopt.
Let's see. There are quite a lot of those. I need to see the numbers.
Any abstentions? We're going to count. So we count 21 agreed, 13 against. So the amendment is adopted. So now I would call Ms. Fry from Canada to propose Amendment 6, but it's Madam Fry is not around, so I call John Aldag to intervene in the name of Ms. Fry. Thank you, from Canada.
Yeah, sorry, just looking for clarification now that we've carried Amendment 5, are we looking at also then carrying this one, or does this one get, I'm happy to speak to it on behalf of Dr. Fry, but just looking for clarification on procedure.
Would you mind to repeat it again, please? To speak loud.
I'm happy to speak to this. I'm just looking procedurally, since we've just carried Amendment 5, does Amendment 6, could it still stand? Yes?
Yeah, it's okay. You can go.
Okay,
you can
okay.
proceed. Yeah,
well,
no
then,
problem.
thank you very much. And on behalf of Dr. Fry, the head of our delegation, I'd like to thank the rapporteur for putting forward this resolution, a resolution that reflects the broad range of topics addressed in the committee's report. Dr. Fry's proposed amendment would add in a new paragraph a gender perspective to our discussions on this topic. As Dr. Fry reiterates in her 2022 gender report, the pandemic has had disproportionate negative consequences for women. Women's equal participation in the labor force must now be addressed if we're to tackle widespread financial insecurity and poverty as we emerge from the pandemic. Many international organizations and institutions have outlined the importance of applying an intersectional gender lens to the COVID-19 economic recovery plans. And amid this intersector crisis affecting the Osce region, we must not lose sight of the importance of gender inequality. So thank you for your support with this amendment.
So thank you very much, Mr. Aldag. And does anyone wants to speak against this amendment? So if not, I let the floor to Ms. Gudrun Kugler to comment on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I already indicated my support. Thank you. At this point, I think COVID recovery does need these specific lenses to look into what was the effects on the people. And at this point, I would also like to ask you to bring our greetings to Mrs. Fry, also for her quick recovery.
So thank you very much, Ms. Kugler. I shall now put Amendment 6 to the vote. Will all those in favor of Amendment 6 please raise their voting cards? The ones against? 1, 2. So abstentions? So the amendment is adopted. Thank you. So we will now vote on paragraph 43 as amended. Anyone against? Those in favor? So unanimity. So abstentions? 2 abstentions, 3 abstentions. So the amendment 43 is adopted. Sorry. So amendment 7, I call Mr. Aldag from Canada to propose amendment 7 for 1 minute. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Colleagues, thank you for considering this proposed amendment. Russia's aggression in Ukraine has had devastating consequences for the Ukrainian people. Thousands have been killed, millions have been displaced, and Ukrainians across the country have had their livelihoods destroyed. As an Osce community, we must use every tool at our disposal to end this war and to hold Russia accountable. The amendment would add an operative paragraph to the draft resolution to underline the need to intensify economic pressure on Russia by phasing out the import of fossil fuels. As we all know, the Russian economy relies heavily on revenues from oil and natural gas. In 2021, these revenues made up 45% of Russia's federal budget. The amendments signal support for recent global efforts to phase out the import of Russian energy. In recognition of the fact that several participating states remain reliant on Russian oil, the amendment also emphasizes that this phase-out must be done in an orderly fashion. I ask for your support for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aldag. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment 7? So again, I let the floor to Ms. Gudrun to comment on the amendment.
Thank you very much for the amendment. I support it. This is a top security concern. It's become more and more apparent in the last couple of months, weeks even, and so I'm very grateful for the addition.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Kugler. So I shall put amendment 7 to vote. Will in favor please raise your cards. Against the amendment 7, please raise your cards. No one. And abstentions? 1 abstention. So the amendment is adopted. So now amendment 8, I call Mr. Invidia from Italy to propose amendment 8. Mr. Invidia,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After talking to the rapporteur, I will propose an oral amendment, and now the new wording of the amendment 8 will be calls on government to promote an economic and infrastructural reconstruction program for Ukraine. So it's pretty self-explanatory, and of course it's also a little bit premature, but on the other side, we hope, of course, that this war ends pretty soon, so that we can proceed on the reconstruction of Ukraine. And in that regards, of course, it's important to have, to start to have something written in terms of resolutions both in the Osce and in the European Union on this regard. Thank you.
Grazie, Signor Invidia. There is an oral amendment then. So in accordance with the paragraph 10 of Rule 22 of our Rules of Procedure, first I will ask whether there is any objection to the oral amendment being considered. If there is any objection, the oral amendment cannot be considered and it falls. So can we say that there is no objection to the amendment? If there is no objection, we will proceed to consider the amendment in the same way as other amendments. That is, we will hear from the proposer of the oral amendment and one speak against the oral amendment, and the opinion of the rapporteur, who will now describe a bit the oral transaction, let's say.
Thank you, Mr. Invidia, for your efforts. I think that reconstruction of Ukraine is absolutely key, already to be considered and begun really now at this point. When the report and the resolution were drafted, we were more in the worry of what's going on. Now we look forward into what to do for reconstruction. So I thank you for your effort. For clarity for all of us, now the oral amendment, but do correct me if I'm not right. So we look into your text that you have originally proposed. Now in your oral amendment, you take out 2 lines so that it will read, calls on the governments to ensure greater efforts at OSCE and EU level, and then deletion, to promote an economic and infrastructure reconstruction program and to continue to the end. So we're taking out for the management and redistribution of refugees and displaced persons, and we keep the reconstruction in there. Is that correct?
That is actually even a better version. So yeah, so again, it will read, calls on government to ensure greater efforts at the OSCE and EU levels to promote an economic reconstruction and infrastructural reconstruction program for Ukraine with the contribution of the states in the OSCE area.
Yeah, that's what I read, and so
Exactly.
we agree on the
we
text.
agree, yes.
I'm in favor of the oral amendment. I think this is very important and forward-looking.
So we will then decide by sample majority vote whether we adopt the oral amendment. So I would like to ask you if there is any objection to the oral amendment being considered. Anyone wants to object? If there is any objection, it will collapse, let's say, it will fall. So I imagine that there is no objection, so I think we go to the vote. Those in favor of the oral amendment? Those against? One against. Abstentions? This is the vote. So the oral amendment is adopted. So we go to paragraph 44, if I'm not wrong. We will vote on paragraph 44. Anyone against? Paragraph 44, those in favor? There's one against, no? Abstentions? None? So the paragraph 44 is agreed. Again, I call Mr. Invidia from Italy to propose Amendment 9. You have the floor for 1 minute.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that the paragraph 45 is particularly important because it focuses on modern issues such as longevity, depopulated areas, demography. And so I have simply added a few additional policies to the one that I've proposed the rapporteur. So you can see that there is, for example, digital nomad visas, e-residency, longevity-related policies, and welfare system for the newly formed households. And yeah, it's just some more specification in terms of policies.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 9? So again, I let the floor to Ms. Kugler, the rapporteur, to comment on the amendment.
I am in favor of the amendment. We could argue that it's a little bit too many details for a resolution, but the ideas are good. And I'm also glad that you collected support of Ms. Paola Taverna, who is the speaker for the OSCE PA, the special representative for elderly people, and that includes the issue of demography. And so I think this is a very good idea, and I thank you for it.
So we should vote now the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment, please raise your cards. Abstentions? One. Those who are against, raise your card, please. So the amendment is adopted. So we are now on paragraph 45. We vote on paragraph 45. Anyone against? Those in favor? Abstentions? One abstention. And against? No? Anyone against?
No, she really said.
Okay. So the paragraph 45 is agreed, and then paragraphs 46 to 50, there is no amendments. So let's take them together if there is no objection. Is there any objection to vote these paragraphs together? So we vote paragraphs 46 to 50 together. Please raise your cards. Those in favor of these paragraphs. Okay. Those who are against these paragraphs, please raise your cards. One. No. Abstentions? So no abstentions, no votes against. So the paragraphs are adopted. Now on Amendment 10, I call Ms. Glanzmann from Switzerland to propose Amendment 10 for 1 minute. Please, you have the floor, Ms.
Danke, Herr Vorsitzender. Ich möchte eigentlich einen neuen Antrag einfügen nach Paragraph 51. Menschenhandel ist eines der am schwersten aufzudeckenden Verbrechen. Er findet im Verborgenen statt, wobei sich die Opfer in einer besonders schutzbedürftigen Lage befinden. Besonders gefährdet sind Migrantinnen. Ihr unsicherer oder illegaler Aufenthaltsstatus drängt sie an den Rand von sozialen und rechtlichen Systemen. Da sie zum Schweigen verurteilt und unsichtbar sind, ist ihre Identifizierung in Ermangelung von Beweisen und Zeugenaussagen besonders schwierig. Daher ist es auch schwierig, ihre Zahl zu beziffern. Diese wird generell stark unterschätzt. So wird oft behauptet, dass dieses Verbrechen in unserer modernen Gesellschaft nur Randphänomene seien. Die Besonderheiten des Menschenhandels führen dazu, dass dieses Verbrechen, um aufgedeckt zu werden, sehr spezielle Kenntnisse voraussetzt. Aus diesem Grund sollten auch Polizei und Richter stärker auf diese Besonderheiten geschult werden. Danke, wenn Sie meinen Antrag unterstützen.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Glanzmann. Does anyone want to speak against Amendment 10? Anyone again? Want to speak again? No? So I would like to give the floor to Ms. Kugler, the rapporteur. Thank you.
I would like to thank Ms. Glanzmann to take the issue up. As you know, we have done a special event also for the second committee on the issue of human trafficking in a globalized economy. So for this reason, I welcome all efforts to combat human trafficking. And I do support the amendment. However, I have to say that the content of this amendment would actually have to go to committee number 3, maybe to committee number 1. So from the way it's formulated, it does not really fit into number 2. But we did have a focus on human trafficking. We do talk about human trafficking in our resolution, so we can add it there, even though for competency matters, it's not perfect.
Thank you, Ms. Kugler. So we should proceed to vote now, Amendment 10. So please, all those who are in favor of this amendment, please raise your cards.
I will write the numbers here as they come.
Those against the amendment? No one. Abstentions? One. So Amendment 10 is adopted. So now we go through paragraph 51. We will now vote. Anyone against? Paragraph 51. Those in favor? Okay. Any abstentions? One abstention. One there. And two. So we go to the Amendment 11. Sorry, I call Mr. Doggett from the U.S. to propose Amendment 11 for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, and I salute Ms. Kugler for the resolution overall, particularly its focus on the link between security and the climate crisis. This amendment focuses on another form of pollution, and I believe it is consistent with her paragraphs 16 and 52 to 53. It is not just those who pull the trigger in Ukraine that are the problem. It is not just those who are speaking Russian all the time, but some in the West, in thick carpet law firms, in posh clubs, who help facilitate the hiding of blood money. Decades of access to anonymous financial vehicles and the world's, perhaps some of the world's smartest lawyers and accountants have enabled Putin's cronies to steal with impunity and move their wealth to the West. It undermines our system. I urge my colleagues to work within their parliaments to adopt measures for our security as recommended in this amendment, particularly as it relates to lawyers, accountants, realtors determining the source of suspicious clients' funds.
Thank you, Mr. Dodgett. Is there anyone wishing to speak against this amendment? So I would like to give the floor to Ms. Kugler to comment on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to first thank you for the amendment and the thoughts behind it. I would myself abstain on this amendment because I agree with the intention, but I'm not very happy with the way it's formulated. It's very generalizing, and in a way you could say not all kleptocrats are necessarily corrupt, not all oligarchs are from Russia, and a person in itself cannot be transnational. Right? So I see it's like generalizations that make it a bit more difficult, so I can tell you as a rapporteur, I will be abstaining.
So thank you very much, Ms. Kugler. I shall now put Amendment 11 to the vote. All the ones who are in favor of the amendment, please raise your card. Those who are against the amendment, raise your card. Abstentions? So there are 29 in favor, so the amendment is adopted. So paragraph 52, we will now vote on paragraph 52. Anyone against? One. Those in favor of paragraph 52? In favor? Abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4. So the amendment, the paragraph is adopted, sorry. We will now take paragraphs 53 to 56 together. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs? A separate vote? No? So we will take paragraphs 33 to 36 together and we vote. Anyone against these paragraphs? Those in favor, please raise your cards. Abstentions? One abstention. So paragraphs 53 to 56 are adopted. Now I call Ms. Glanzmann from Switzerland to propose Amendment 12. Madame Glanzmann, s'il vous plaît.
Danke, Herr Vorsitzender. Wasserknappheit, wasserbedingte Katastrophen und Verschmutzung können die politische Stabilität gefährden. Auch die OSZE-Region ist hiervon betroffen. Angesichts des Klimawandels werden gerade bei grenzüberschreitenden Gewässern die Fragen der Verteilung der Wasserressourcen immer dringlicher. Eine gemeinsame Bewirtschaftung von Wasserressourcen kann zu besseren Beziehungen zwischen Ländern und Gemeinschaften führen und Sicherheit, Wohlstand und Umweltschutz fördern. Eine engere regionale Zusammenarbeit erfordert aber Vertrauen zwischen den Anrainerstaaten. Dabei zeigt sich immer wieder, wie gering das gegenseitige Vertrauen vielerorts ist, wenn es darum geht, die grenzüberschreitende Zusammenarbeit im Wassersektor zu stärken. Mit dem vorgeschlagenen Änderungsantrag kann unsere Versammlung einen wichtigen Schritt dazu beitragen, um dieses Vertrauen unter den OSZE-Teilnehmerstaaten zu stärken. Danke für die Unterstützung.
Thank you, Ms. Landsman. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 12? So, Mrs. Kugler, would you like to comment?
I would support the amendment and thank you, Mrs. Ganzmann. It's in the spirit and the focus of the resolution and in the spirit and the focus of OSCE-PA, and it fits very much into what the second committee is trying to achieve, so I support it.
So I shall now put Amendment 12 to the vote. Will, I would say, all in favor of the amendment, please raise your card. Those against, please raise your cards. No one. And against? Two. Any abstentions? So the amendment is adopted. And now I would like to, I call Mr. Hajiani from Cyprus to propose Amendment 13 for 1 minute. You have the floor.
Vielen Dank. Thank you very much. Sorry. Dear colleagues, I submitted this amendment to highlight the fact that cooperation in this sector is so crucial, but very, very, very crucial. We must join forces to combat wildfires. Thank you very much, and I please for the support of this amendment. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Does anyone want to speak against Amendment 13? So if not, I let the floor to Ms. Kugler.
I would like to thank Mr. Hajiani for this proposal. Most unfortunately, these issues are becoming more and more important for us all across Europe. So I'm in favor of the amendment. And I would like to inform you that I will be suggesting to the drafting committee to place this paragraph after paragraph 59. So text as proposed, but in a different location, and this, because it will be fitting more smoothly. This is my suggestion to the drafting committee, who will be looking at the placement.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you, Ms. Kugler. So we should put the amendment to vote. So those in favor of Amendment 13, raise your card, please. Those against? Abstentions? So the Amendment 13 is adopted. We will now vote on paragraph 57. Anyone against? Paragraph 57? None. Those in favor? Okay. Abstentions? It's okay, so the paragraph 57 is agreed. So we will now vote on paragraph 58. Anyone against? Paragraph 58? No one. So those in favor, please raise your cards. Okay. Any abstention? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So the paragraph is agreed. And now I call Ms. Odebrink from Sweden to propose Amendment 14 for 1 minute. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope you will support my proposal here. In the work on Agenda 2030, we need to increase knowledge and understanding that the global challenges are connected. Poverty, health, pollution, inequality, and more. Therefore, we must deal with these together as a whole and not separately. Reducing poverty and increasing gender equality is also saving the environment. Also, it's about strengthening the security in the world. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Odebrink. Does anyone wish to speak against this amendment? So again, I let the floor to the rapporteur, Ms. Kugler, if she wants to comment on the amendment.
I would like to thank Ms. Odebrink for proposing this language, which is very important. I suggest to, so I will support it, and I ask for broad support. I think that more and more this interconnection is becoming apparent, and it's very much in line with the spirit of this of OSCE EPA, but also of this committee, that we will point this out very as expressly as possible.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kugler. So let's put this amendment into the voting process. So let's go. Those in favor of the amendment? Those against the amendment? Against the amendment? Okay. None. Any abstentions? So the amendment 14 is adopted. And now we will now vote on paragraph 59. Anyone against? Paragraph 59. Those in favor of paragraph 59? Any abstention? So then the amendment is adopted, the paragraph is adopted, sorry. So now paragraph 60 to 62, sorry, we'll take them together. Anyone prefers to vote separately these paragraphs? So if nobody wants to vote separately, we take these paragraphs together. So let's vote. Anyone against those two paragraphs? Those in favor? Okay. Abstentions? Abstentions? Okay, so the paragraphs are adopted. So amendments 15 and 16 both relate to paragraph 63. I should clarify to the committee that if amendment 15 is adopted, then amendment 16 will fall. This is because amendment 16 proposed to amend a section of text that will be deleted if amendment 15 is adopted. I call Mr. Dodgett from the US to propose amendment 15 for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Every dollar, every euro, every pound that is paid to Russia for oil and gas oils the Russian war machine, enabling more Russian massacres and war crimes. In the first 100 days of Russia's unprovoked aggression in Ukraine, Russia earned an estimated $93 billion in euros for its sales of oil and gas. This broad amendment recognizes that all countries are not positioned the same, and that some have already become so dependent on Russian gas and oil that it is difficult for them to remove away from it, but that our ultimate goal is to become less dependent on one source of energy. The Russians have reduced supplies, they have terminated supplies to some. It really, consistent with the entire resolution, is a reminder that we need to give up fossilized thinking and reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and move to more renewables to both help Ukraine and to fight the climate crisis.
Thank you very much. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 15? If not, I let the floor to the rapporteur, Ms. Kugler.
I would like to speak against the amendment. I do agree with the intention, of course. We should not depend on any one source of energy supply. We say that we should not depend on one form of energy supply already in previous paragraphs, such as 33, 35, 46. So it's very clear that we do not want to depend on one source, and that, let alone be Russia. However, energy does not come normally from one country alone. We are not there's no, it's not possible for a country to be completely reliant on only itself. Therefore, we need energy dialogue. We need to work together as countries. This is what OSCE is all about. You are deleting, Mr. Doggett, with your amendment. You are deleting wording like strengthening energy dialogue, depoliticize energy issues, climate diplomacy, and to address upcoming energy threats in a collaborative manner. All of this you are deleting. All of this is what OSCE really stands for. So had you proposed to just add your concern to the existing paragraph, it would have been perfect. But I would disadvise to delete the terms of energy dialogue that I think are key for OSCE.
Thank you, Ms. Kugler. I will give 15 seconds to Arthur, who wants to...
Just 10 seconds, sorry, and thank you very much for providing the wording. Ukrainian delegation is strongly in favor of this amendment, because not other OSCE states, but exactly Russia, always use energy as a weapon. And you know it even better than we. Thank you.
So, I would like to put the amendment on to the vote. So please, who are in favor of this amendment, please raise your cards.
Give us time to count. 26. Okay.
How many?
6, 21, 19, so 25 in favor.
Those against?
Let's count. Give us a second. So the two girls counting and against she's one. So 12. It's more in favor. Abstentions?
Any abstentions?
6.
How many against?
It's 25 in favor, 12 against.
And any abstentions?
Abstentions 5. 7. 7.
So the counting is 25 in favor of the amendment, 12 against the amendment, and 7 abstentions. So the amendment is adopted. So as I said before, if Amendment 15 is adopted, Amendment 16 automatically falls and will therefore not be considered. So let's go to paragraph 63. We'll now vote on paragraph 63. Anyone against paragraph 63?
As amended.
As amendment, of course. Those in favor? Abstentions? Four. So the paragraph 63 is adopted. We'll now take paragraph 64 and 65 together. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs? Anyone want a separate vote? So they will take them together. Anyone against these two paragraphs? Those in favor, please raise your card. Abstentions? Abstentions? 1, 2. So paragraphs 64 and 65 are adopted. Amendment 16, I call Mr. Invidia from Italy to propose Amendment 16. You have the floor for 1 minute. 17, I said, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can understand form of skepticism on this topic, but as the rapporteur said yesterday, this committee looks at key questions on the future, and surely crypto is one of them. In general, there is a lack of understanding and therefore policies in this regard, and so we need to develop and share best practices. And secondly, there is, of course, a geopolitical aspect of crypto. As we have recently seen, we think about migrants, political refugees, or unbanked population. So unbanked population will be those who cannot access bank services, and there are actually more than 1 billion people. And in these hard circumstances, crypto exchanges, even if controversial, they can become a service. So this surely is something on which the OSCE can have a leadership role, and this is why I suggest the constitution of a technical panel within the OSCE. I especially think within the office of the coordinator of economic and environmental activities. Thank you.
Thank you. And does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 17? So if there is no one who wants to speak against, I would like to let the floor to Ms. Gudrun to comment on the amendment.
Again, thank you to Mr. Invidia for taking up all of these issues. I think the issue of cryptocurrencies fits very well into the second committee, and I'm in favor of the amendment. However, I see a little weakness by us as OSCE PA recommending something to OSCE where they have their own policies and I don't know how impressed they will be, no? But generally the topic is important for us, and maybe for the future we can take it up even more strongly.
So thank you very much, Ms. Kugler. I shall now put Amendment 17 to the vote. So those in favor of the amendment, please raise your cards. Those in favor. Those against. Abstentions? 1, 2, 3. So, thank you very much. Amendment 17 is adopted. We will now vote on paragraph 66 as amended. Anyone against? Paragraph 66? 1 vote against. Those in favor of the paragraph 66? Abstentions? 1, 2. So the paragraph 66 is adopted. Now we will take paragraph 66 to 69 together. Does anyone? I said 67 to 69, sorry. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs? Okay, so let's take the paragraph separately. So let's vote first paragraph 67. Those in favor of paragraph 67? Those against? None. Abstentions? Okay, the paragraph is adopted. Let's go for the paragraph 68. Those in favor? 68.
They asked for a
Those again, paragraph 68. Those again, against, sorry. Any abstentions? One. So paragraph 68 is adopted. And the last one, paragraph 69. Those in favor of paragraph 69? So the paragraph 69 is also adopted. Yeah, sorry. The ones who are against, sorry, it's paragraph 69. And any abstentions? So the paragraph 69 is adopted. So that concludes the consideration of amendments. Really thank you to all contributions, to all the work. Thank you also to the rapporteur, to the work of the team. And I propose that we now formally move to a vote to the draft resolution as amended. Would those in favor of adopting the draft resolution please raise the voting cards? Favor of the draft resolution. Please raise your cards because we have to count it until the end. Mm-hmm. 54. So those against the draft resolution, please raise your card. Those against? No one against. Abstentions? One abstention. So
Two abstentions. Who is the second? Also there.
two abstentions. So 2 abstentions, no votes against, and 54 in favor. So the resolution is adopted. So before going to the next point, I would like to give the floor to the rapporteurs to share a little bit, a couple of words with you all.
Famous last words. No, I want to thank you for adopting the resolution, and I want to thank you also for this very interesting political dialogue we had this morning. For me, it's the first time to do this, and this was very interesting. I take from this as a learning that we need to be, maybe for future years, even more practical with recommendations for parliaments. One thing is to explain the issue, but the other thing is to say, what should a parliament now do? And I also take from the discussion today, but also yesterday, future issues like energy efficiency, inflation, reconstruction of Ukraine, all of these issues to look into, especially for the second committee. And I would like to encourage you to take the resolution, cut it into pieces according to the committees in your parliament, and say, okay, this chapter or these 5 paragraphs are interesting for our committee on economy and also interesting for our committee on environment and so on and so forth, so that they can use it for their own policies. This is what the OSCE EPA is about. But if your colleagues in your other committees in your parliaments don't know about the resolution, it will not be used. So it's really on the national delegations to make sure that the resolution, as it was amended and discussed and adopted, gets used by our 57 parliaments. And I would like to thank especially Pere Pons, our chair, for the cooperation we had. It was wonderful, and also the Secretariat. This was very productive, and I enjoyed it very much, and I just want to thank you with all of my heart.
Thank you very much. Gudrun, it was, I think, for all of us, almost the first time, so I apologize for any mistakes we made. So we have to proceed now. We now move on the consideration of the supplementary items allocated to this committee. We have 3. And then there is now consider draft resolution on a code of conduct for members of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. This is a very important resolution and will affect all members of the OSCE EPA. In the first instance, it will be for the it will be for this committee to consider this supplementary item as allocated by the Standing Committee. However, all members will have the opportunity to vote on this item in the plenary session. I would now like to give the floor to the sponsor of this supplementary item, Mrs. Karalambidis. For examples, you have the floor, Mrs. Karalambidis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me comment first on the excellent work this committee is doing, especially on anti-corruption issues. I'm very glad to work with you and cooperate with you. It's very important to me to find some strong and determined allies, especially may I refer to Mrs. Kugler. Now, concerning the supplementary item, which is a code of conduct for members of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. Dear colleagues, I am very glad that this supplementary item has gathered the necessary support to be put on our agenda. I believe that the OSCPA must have a code of conduct. We have pledged time and again to prevent and fight corruption. Every final declaration that we have adopted over the years includes provisions on transparency, accountability, and integrity. We very often condemned the corrosive effects of corruption on our security, our economies, and our democracies. Last May, we organized a conference in Cyprus on this matter, which was very well attended. What's more, we have adopted a code of conduct for OSCPA election observation missions, which seeks to exclude the impact of corruption on our work, like other assemblies whose objectiveness was at times compromised. We cannot afford for that to happen to the OSCPA. Dear colleagues, we often say that no country is immune to corruption. I would say that neither are international organizations. The supplementary item is not the final text of a code of conduct for the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, but rather a starting point, which includes basic provisions that we can discuss further after the annual session. It aims to send a strong message of commitment on behalf of the OSCPA to lead by example in this field, to put its own house in order first, before preaching others. The text, as you have seen, contains some baseline provisions concerning conflicts of interest, conduct during OSCPA missions, acceptance of gifts. This is a very, very important issue, acceptance of gifts and hospitality. A number of sections are also provided to make sure that a possible code can have a deterrent effect. At the same time, it is a realistic text. Given the widespread divergences observed, the provisions set out in this supplementary item are limited to the bare minimum, I would say. Some might disagree. Much more could be inserted on contacts with pressure groups, financial declarations, etc. But I expect to receive feedback from you on these issues in the months to come and try to find a common denominator. I look forward to discussing in further with you during and after the annual session to form the actual tasks of a binding code of conduct. Concluding, I can't stress enough how crucial the expertise and support of the OSCPA's people who work with me, and I refer to Marco Bonabello and Anya, will be in this effort. I am quite certain that they perfectly realize the added value of this initiative and will do their utmost to bring it to fruition. They have stood by my side, as of course Mrs. Kugler has done as well. They have stood by my side since the very beginning, and none of this would have been possible without their valuable assistance and support. Thank you all so much, and I hope you go for this.
Thank you very much, Ms. Karalambidis. So now we have time for opening the debate. We have no one on the list of speakers, but I let you take the lead if anyone wants to speak and react or comment on the words of Ms. Karalambidis. If not, we will go through the amendments and the paragraphs. So anyone would like to take the floor? So we still have, let's say, 5 to 7 minutes before we stop. We have to stop at maximum 10:35. So I think we should at least spend 5 minutes starting the debate on the amendment. So we will now move to consider the amendments submitted to the supplementary item. Amendments have been tabled and copies of the amendments have been made available. In discussing amendments, I will call the proposer of the amendment or amendment first, and then we'll call any opponent of the amendment, as we made previously. I will then ask the sponsor of the draft resolution, Mrs. Karalambidis, if she has any comments to make. We also vote on each paragraph to which there are no amendments, as we made also previously. We vote also the paragraphs with no amendments. So we start with paragraphs 1 to 6. There are no amendments to paragraphs 1 to 6. So if you have no objections, we'll take them together. Does anyone want a separate vote on any of these paragraphs? No? So please, those in favor, raise your cards. How many? Those against? So there are no votes. 2 against. And any abstentions? So these paragraphs are agreed. And I call Ms. Karalambidis from Cyprus to propose Amendment 1. You have the floor for 1 minute.
Thank you. Well, I felt it was necessary in the supplementary item that I have submitted to better clarify that the proposed text is not a code of conduct per se, but rather a set of provisions that need to be taken into consideration in our future discussions on a possible code of conduct, which I hope, after the suggestions of the member, will be even more strict than the one I have already presented. Shall I proceed for the amendment number 2 or not?
No, I
No,
think
okay.
Thank you, Ms. Karalambidis. I have to ask if there is anyone wishing to speak against this first amendment. So there is no one against. So you want to add anything, Ms. Karalambidis, on this? No? So let's go to the vote. Those in favor of Amendment 1, please raise your cards. Sorry. Again, raise your card. Any abstentions? 1 abstention. So the Amendment 1 is adopted. So we now move on paragraph 7. We have to vote it. Those in favor of paragraph 7? Those against? Against paragraph 7? No one. Abstentions? 1 abstention. So the paragraph is adopted. Paragraphs 8 and 9 with no amendments. So we will take paragraphs together. Does anyone want a separate vote? Separate vote. So let's start with paragraph 8. Those in favor of paragraph 8? Those against paragraph 8?
23.
No one. Abstentions? 1 abstention. So we now vote the paragraph 9. Those in favor of paragraph 9? Those against paragraph 9? 1. Against paragraph 9? 1 only. So the paragraph 9 is abstention, sorry. Is there any abstention? No, so the paragraph 9 is adopted. So I call Ms. Fry from Canada to propose amendment 2. I imagine that Mr. Voilà, Madame Michaud a la parole. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Au nom de Dr. Fry, je veux remercier l'auteur de ce point additionnel. Le Code de conduite proposé dans le point additionnel énumère les obligations en matière de comportement général des membres de l'AP ou SCE, mais il n'est pas question de violence fondée sur le genre. Je souligne le fait que le point additionnel mentionne d'autres codes de conduite, y compris celui des membres de l'Assemblée parlementaire du Conseil de l'Europe. L'amendement proposé intégrerait donc des obligations en matière de violence fondée sur le genre, semblables à celles contenues dans le Code de conduite de l'Assemblée parlementaire du Conseil de l'Europe. Ainsi, on exigerait que les membres s'abstiennent de toute forme de sexisme, de harcèlement sexuel et de violence fondée sur le genre. L'amendement correspond à plusieurs recommandations que Dr. Fry a formulées dans son rôle de représentante spéciale pour les questions de genre à l'Assemblée parlementaire de l'OSCE pour contrer la violence contre les femmes. Les femmes parlementaires sont confrontées à la violence non seulement au sein de leurs parlements nationaux, mais également partout où elles sont appelées à s'acquitter de leurs fonctions. Un code de conduite qui aborde ce problème aidera à faire en sorte que toutes les femmes parlementaires puissent accomplir leur mandat en toute sécurité. Donc, je vous invite à soutenir ce point, cet amendement. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Michaud. Est-ce qu'il y aurait quelqu'un qui voudrait voter contre l'amendement? Ms. Karalambidis, would you like to add anything on the amendment?
Yes, it's an excellent amendment, to be honest. I envy that it was Mrs. Fry's proposal and I didn't think of it myself. So, yes, I will fully support it.
Thank you, Ms. Karalambidis. So, I agree too. So, I shall put the amendment to vote. So, those in favor of amendment 2, please raise your cards. Those against this amendment? One against or no? So there is any abstention? 1 abstention. So I think we should close now, stop now because there are other sessions ongoing. So if you let me close and thank you all, and I will give the floor to Irene.
There is only one amendment, Mr. President, so I think it would be better to finish. There is only one amendment from Mr. Omanovic from Sweden.
My colleagues informed me that there is a little bit more than one amendment. So I think we should keep and stick to the time because there will be more than 2 minutes discussion, I think. And it seems that there is also a problem of translation. So I think we should close and then we will continue this afternoon at 2:30, if you don't mind. Is that okay for you? So thank you very much also to Ms. Karlambidis, and we will continue the meeting at 2:30. Thank you very much for your contributions.